All right, so I had a tough job because the organizer asked for putting in 6 slides a paper of 25 pages. So I tried to do my best, right? I see that one of them is here. Thank you for that. I'm kidding. All right, so the text, the topic there is actually, it's the last word, the lesson of history, which is the most important in this new Silk Road at the heart of the power struggle between China and the United States. Actually, the start of my paper was, you mentioned this man, Graham Allison there. It was this Thucydides trap. I don't know how you pronounce it in English, really, Thucydide in French. Well, okay, it's all right.
Thucydides.
Thucydides, okay, let's do it like the Greek, we don't say that, but yeah. Thucydides? Thucydides, all right. Well, anyway, when I was, I find, of course, this book and the comments made extremely interesting. But ultimately, I realized that the focus was on traditional history, actually, meaning land and sea power struggles. So there is a lot of example there where we can see that much of the time, so I don't know if you can see that properly. For instance, if I take the second period there, first half of the 16th century, ruling power is supposed to be France, for instance, there, and the rising power is the Habsburg. We take this example there. Another one is Habsburg versus Ottoman Empire, or even here, Habsburg versus Sweden. There, I realized that, well, at least my analysis is that it is not dealing with the key points in this story, because it's focusing on land and sea power struggle. My suggestion has been then, let's have a look at, if I'm trying to do exactly the same, but this time using historian of economics like Fernand Braudel, the French guy, or Immanuel Wallerstein, the American guys. And let's try to see what we will get there, trying to do that. So then the result is totally different. The idea behind the studies of Fernand Braudel and Immanuel Wallerstein, actually, were to deal with how the world developed with the capitalist development, let's say basically after the 16th century. There is this remarkable book which is called Perspective of the World, the translation in English, right? And what is this book talking about? It's actually talking about the story of Western Europe, gradual domination of international trade in the modern area. So we can see that clearly on this map there. In 1500, all the trade routes in Europe were around the Mediterranean Sea, making a connection with Antwerp and the Baltic Sea over there. Almost 3 centuries later, we see that not only the Spaniards, the Portuguese, but also the French and the British developed all this trade route around the world, and this long-distance trade ended up with the wealth and the domination of Europe. There was a fantastic missed opportunity for China 1 century before the Great Discovery, when the admiral, I don't remember his name in English, I wouldn't say it properly, a Chinese admiral, made several travel journeys around the Indian Oceans. And at that time, China was far ahead. But China made a choice to decide that sea development and trade was not important at all, and focus on continental stuff. They shipped the capital from Nanking through to Beijing, and actually there, China, that was the major missed opportunity for China. Anyway, the first consequence of that was that there was some ruling powers and rising powers. The key lesson that Braudel is giving us, and Wallerstein also, by the way, is that challenger of the trade and financial hegemon in the past 5 centuries followed, in most cases, mercantilist strategies. And when we are using the word mercantilist strategies here, it doesn't mean only trade mercantilism. We are actually dealing with something which is far more important than that. It's a global strategy, dealing first with manufacturing issues. So what is the first point? First step, domestic manufacturing development, various forms of protectionism, develop a manufacturing power. Then, maybe I should start from the beginning there. If we go back to the starting point there with the Great Discovery, Portugal and Spain were the big winner of it. Portugal, because they developed all the trade routes through Africa, Brazil, and the Indian Ocean, up to Malacca and Japan even, right? And Spain, because they discovered gold and silver in America. Consequently, there was a fantastic wealth getting into the Iberian Peninsula, Portugal and Spain, that were, by the way, one state at some stages in 1580 to 1640, if I remember well. Anyway, Portugal and Spain got gold and silver. The problem for the challenger was to get this gold and silver. What was the challenger at that time? Basically, it was France, England, and Holland, who was still fighting for the independence against the Spaniard. This country there had to find a way to catch up with the power that Spain and Portugal took during this period. And the only way to do that was to use this global mercantilist strategy. This is the key lesson Brodel or Wallerstein is giving us in their book, History of Economics. So the idea was develop a manufacturing base. That was the case for France, that was the case for England. You should use various forms of protectionism to make sure that it will work. So first, you will develop a manufacturing power. What is the point, the objective? It's actually to develop export and reach a trade surplus, right? So you're becoming a trade power by doing that, but ultimately the center of the strategy is about developing permanent trade surpluses. Then at that time, the objective of the French or the British was this accumulation of gold, right? Today we can say that it's a foreign exchange reserve or financial assets. So then we go to a next step, manufacturing power first, trade power second, then financial power. And ultimately, with this financial power, you can develop diplomatic and military power. That's how France, England in the past managed to reverse the course of history against the Spaniard and the Portuguese. What we see, so my suggestion is that it's not Graham Allison historical the distinction that we should take, but the one using Brodel's analysis and Wallerstein analysis. It's far more performing, definitely. So what do we get there? We see that the mother of mercantilism has been England for years, for centuries even. They turned to free trade only in 1850. For 5 centuries, England was the mother of mercantilism. They protect themselves against the Dutch. Navigation Act, preventing the boats from foreign countries to trade with British harbors. These kind of things, right? There was a lot of subsidies for export, prevent import, etc. Mother of mercantilism was England. France has been doing that for years. It started with Francis I, then it was Richelieu did the same, then under Louis XIV there was what we call Colbertism. Same idea, develop a manufacturing base. What is the goal? Export, then get a trade surplus, get the gold from the Spaniard and the Portuguese. Then we see that at one stage where we cannot get into the detail of all this history, it's fascinating, but that's not the point here. At one stage, England managed to get the ruling position when Holland, actually William of Orange, went to England, made a takeover of England, and then Great Britain became the ruling power. Of course, there was a challenger for a year, France. What was the policy followed by Napoleon, for instance? Blockade, trade blockade. So protectionism, same story, to make sure that we can develop a manufacturing base and reverse the course of history. Then when the United Kingdom was the dominant country, what is interesting is that both Germany and the United States followed mercantilist policies. The Lincoln area was the triumph of mercantilism with extremely high tariffs. What was the idea? Protect the new US industries in the northeast of America versus the British competition, versus the mother, the former colonizer, the British. So the United States had very high tariffs from 1850 up to 1944, when winning the war. Winning the war, America was at last in a position to shift to free trade. But before that, it was not the case. When Germany was a challenger, same story. The economic strategy followed by the German was mercantilist, and it was described perfectly with the book of Friedrich List, which has been followed by the German during all this period. So what we see there is that the dominant country is for free trade. Of course, you're for free trade, well, you're bound to win. Your companies are the strongest. Your trade companies, your industrial companies are the strongest. You're for free trade. Please, people, open your border. But when you're the challenger, you're not doing that. On the contrary, you will follow a mercantilist strategy, the way I presented there, which is going far away. It's a ground strategy. It's not only a trade strategy, certainly not. Manufacturing, trade, finance, military and diplomacy, everything is connected in this story, right? So that's what we get over there. If I look at the result, Graham Allison is doing that. We see that there was a lot of wars there between the challengers and the hegemon. But that has not been the case recently with USSR, with Japan, with the European Union and China. Let's hope, well, that nothing of that kind will happen. Right. So it's interesting that maybe there is a touch of optimism that we can get out of here, with Graham Allison is not giving us that ultimately, right? So that's the key point I wanted you to get. You're the ruling country. You are for free trade. You are the challenger. You are for mercantilist. You follow mercantilist policy. So now the question is, did China follow a mercantilist policy in the last 40 years? Of mercantilist strategy, global strategy, as I put it this way. Well, the answer is definitely yes, without any doubt. Everything has been done to make sure that there will be trade surpluses, accumulation of trade surpluses year after year. The cost competitiveness, the labor cost competitiveness, is based on wage repression. That's what we call the Mingyong or Hukou system, right? In China, everybody in the room knows exactly what it means. The competitiveness in terms of cost of China is coming out of it. Right. Second point, which is also extremely important, an undervalued currency for years. And if I take undervalued currencies, well, we can discuss about that, but today it's still around 40%, which is a fantastic competitive advantage for China. For saving, it's also extremely important because in macroeconomics, there is basic national accounting identity, which is telling us that saving minus investment basically will result in X minus M, export minus import. So if the savings are higher than investment, then you're bound to have a trade surplus. What has been happening in China for years, there has been forced saving in a sense that the social security system has not been developed enough to allow the people to consume, actually. So they were forced to save for health issues, unemployment issues, etc., etc. So we got, in this case, all the necessary input to get a permanent trade surplus. And this is exactly what has been happening since the beginning of the decade 2000. And huge trade surpluses that went as high as 600 for the manufacturing trade balance, 600 billion US dollar a year. I'm not talking about the current account there. I'm talking about manufacturing trade surplus. What did China do with all this accumulation of funds there, with the trade surplus there? Actually, basically investing in foreign exchange reserves, right? It went up to 4 trillion US dollar in 2015. And since then, we see this one there, the development actually of direct investment. China goes global is, of course, in this chart here, right? So we can say that definitely, if we take this ground strategy, China has just been doing like France, England, America in the past, right? That's the idea. Today we get something different. We get actually America saying, we understand what China has been doing. So we are talking earlier about the Obama administration position. This free trade agreement where everybody except China, right? That was the idea. So it was already extremely aggressive, actually, as a strategy, as a global strategy. Today, this new administration is obviously, well, that's my view from Europe, right? Is considering that this indirect strategy with the same goal, contain the rise of China. That was the Obama story with the free trade agreement. this new administration is saying, no, this will be too slow, it will be not successful, we need more direct action. This is what is at stake undoubtedly in this story. Because everything that has been done since 2018 by this new administration is more or less referring to Mr. Navarro's position, right? And at the same time also with Mr. Pillsbury, which has been basically saying in 2049, China would like to be number one as they were in the past, right? So what has been done recently is to put tariff to stop export over here. Of course, we have been talking about Huawei and all the technological issues over there, so to stop the Made in China 2025 plan, right? So everything concerning technology transfer, intellectual property theft, etc. This new administration managed to make a coalition actually against China when the EU and Japan are following the US administration today. It's important to realize that. And I would say another one which is not really perceived properly is that China is heavily depending on oil. China is importing today 8 million barrels a day. 8 million barrels a day, it's almost the production of Saudi Arabia or Russia or America today, which is around 10, 12, right? So with the price of oil staying around $70, $80 a barrel, the overcost for China is absolutely huge. So that's another way to actually reduce the trade surpluses of China. Try to contain export, try to increase import payment. At the end of the day, with obviously one key goal, stop the trade surpluses over there. What will be the consequence in this case, if successful? The accumulation of FX reserve or financial asset will be reduced, and consequently, the diplomatic and the military power will be reduced also. I think it looks extremely logic. As a European, I'm not sure I like very much that America is taking over like this again, but I'm afraid it's at least eating at the right place. So ultimately, with the one goal which is clear, then in the Navarro's speech or Pillsbury's speech, is to contain the rise of China, definitely. So my final point is actually about the new Silk Road. And then I wouldn't share the opinion of my previous, that I heard in the previous comment. I think that America has a strategy, a global strategy for years. This global strategy is Mr. Spikeman. Spikeman is kind of heirs of Mackinder and Mahan, right? Kind of mixture of it. What is the idea? The idea of Spikeman, so we are in 1944, end of the Second World War, 1942. The one who controlled the Rimland rules Eurasia, Europe plus Asia. The one who rules Eurasia controlled the destiny of the world. So the point of view of America since the Second World War is basically, we don't need to occupy, we don't need to control physically the Eurasian continent, we just need to control the border, meaning Western Europe, the Middle East, and the China Sea over here. That has been the strategy of America for 75 years. This is what we have in front of us, right? All of a sudden, what is China telling us? New Silk Road, people. The land route will not be important, maybe 10% of it. 10% of transportation will come through that. So the key issue is, of course, the new maritime Silk Road. And then we see something which is absolutely conflicting with the US point of view, because America wants to control the rimland of the Eurasian continent, and China is all of a sudden saying, okay, we are going to take that over. So that's what we are. That's what we have with this new Silk Road story. So you were asking me about what will be the Silk Road I will talk about. That's the one I'm talking about. Okay. So that will be my conclusion. There is a lot of other things to be said, but that will be my conclusion there. Thank you very much, people. Yeah.